Amen. Okay, Hilchas Kilayim Perek Gimel. There's a lot of translation to this perek. I'm going to have to rely on the English, different kinds of plants and grains and things like that. So we'll use this translation. If you have an alternative you want to suggest, go ahead. Halacha Aleph Perek Gimel. Yesh minin ba'azdoyin sheyamin halacha nifron b'tzutarbe. You have one type of species sometimes. That type of species has many different subcategories. Like you have wheat. There's different kinds of wheat. Yeah. This is what you saw yesterday. The reason why they develop different species is because different places and the way it's treating the ground and the natural adaptation. I don't want to say the word evolution, but that's the concept of the species. To the point that it seems like two different species. Even though they don't seem to similar to the eye, since they're one species, I guess genetically they're one species. Therefore, they're not colliding with each other, although they look so different. Halacha base. Sometimes in vegetation you have two species. They look extremely similar to the eye. Unless since they're genetically two different species, they're also with each other because they're two different species. For example, okay, here we go. Lettuce with wavy lettuce. Not sure exactly what that is. Mountain lettuce. Mountain lettuce, wavy lettuce. That's a hishtet. I don't have any pictures over here. Yeah. Moshe saw the endives, wild endives. Creation and leek. In creation saw with wild leek. About kuzbar and coriander, kuzbar with mountain coriander. Chardal and mustard, with Egyptian mustard. The glass and the squash. Glass mitzvahs, Egyptian squash. Glass mutzah with squash of ashes because it's very bitter, and the only way to make it edible is to put it in a fire pit with ashes. Apparently, these species are not colliding one with the other. Even though they may look very different, apparently, but they're essentially one species. Wheat, together with undomesticated wheat, it's like a strange outlier. With oats, and rye, and spelt, and beans, with white beans, and yellow peas, with mung beans, different kinds of wild beans. And white beans. We should have like a chant over here with all these different. Pull oven and white beans. Imasushim with azuki beans. Actually, this one I Googled. It looks like they look like beans. I don't go shopping, so I do, but I don't like buy beans. So I don't know. All right. Vakishus and zucchini. Imamufan with cucumbers. Vakruv cabbage. With cauliflower. Vaterodin and beets. Imhaloinin with sorrel, sorrel. These are not climbing with each other. Aval, however, it's named radish. Imana pusin with Israeli radish. Bachadla mustard, imhalafsun with bitter cabbage. Or the last Yavanis with Greek squash. In the last mitzvahs with Egyptian squash. Or with squash of ashes. Coming to before you have to put it in the ash pit to make it sweet. Although they seem similar, they are considered Kilayim. Dalit. The chayamil, that's as far as seeds go. Now trees. You have some species similar to each other. But the leaves are similar to each other. The pears or the fruit is similar to each other. Since they're two different species chemically or genetically. For example, tapuach apples with chazar, which is chazar, whatever that means, I'm not sure. But parsakin and he says chazar. He just always says he doesn't touch it.
You don't know what a chazar is?
Parsakin and peaches. Imashkin with almonds. Why are almonds and peaches similar? So I think
Rashi says that.
Someone was. I think someone.
Rashi mentions it.
The almond pit.
The almond
looks
pit
similar
is the inside of the peach pit.
Oh, so a peach pit and the almond look similar.
No, after you crack open the
peach pit
inside.
Oh, inside. That's okay.
Yeah, it doesn't look at all like a peach on the outside.
No, I mean a peach pit looks like almonds. Looks like an almond, no?
When you crack it open.
Okay, good. That's the word. Thank you. V'hashezofin, an Arabian jujube. Excuse me, sorry. V'hashezofin and prunes. Im harimin with Arabian jujube. Although they seem similar, they are considered kilayim with each other. Aval ha'agosin, apricots. Im ha'kerus milim, with white plums, va'pirishim and quinces, imahu uzrodin with thorn apples. Eight climbs they're not climbing with each other. Okay, so you have to know based on the genetic component and the appearance is secondary apparently. Okay, now the appearance is still important. We'll see future halachas. Halacha hey. Sometimes also you have other kinds of plants or trees. Even though they are due to different species by nature, since it's even though two different species, but since the leaves are very similar, or the fruits are very similar, the dimya and gadol very very similar, to the point that the two different species can seem like they're one type. By Kilayim, you go after Marasayan.
Only a Marasayan?
In other words, obviously there's a certain amount. Well, there's two things about Marasayan: the species and how close they are to each other. So, in other words, apparently the vart is that the biological nature is actually secondary factor. Apparently, yeah. So that's really what determines if it's mixed, if it's mixed or not. That would go after how it looks. So the first part of the law we said the dafki go after the. Right. So the vart depends how similar and how different. In other words, you have to factor both. The primary factor apparently is the appearance. The secondary factor we can see it seems is the genetic nature. Okay. Vav, ketzad. For example, halefes imatznein, turnips and radishes. Eidim climbs are not climbing with each other. But pteisha perei and shavin because the fruits are very similar. Valefes imanofos, turnips and Israeli radishes. Eidim climbs are not climbing with each other. But pteisha only shavin because the leaves are almost identical. About manofos, but radishes and Israeli radishes. Over there, even though the leaves and the fruits do resemble each other, since the tastes are so drastically different, you can't consider one species. The same thing applies in all these cases. So you have to consider apparently first and foremost the appearance, second the genetic component, third of all the taste. And these are the things Chazal use to determine what's considered a mix with who can mix with who. All right, Zion. Here's where, yeah. So again, there's no. Okay, good, fine. Okay, halacha zayin. That's a species. Now that the parak goes on to discuss something completely different, which is how far you have to distance two species. Right? Once you say two species, how far must they be from each other? An inch, a foot, a mile. How much you have to separate seeds, like not trees, but seeds over here, really, like grains or garden seeds or beans from each other. If they're Kilayim, how far does the gap have to be? Because they should use it should be similar. They're planted separately, right? Because again, there's a shear that tell you how far they have to be. That's a smaller amount, but that's not sufficient. It has to be large enough that the onlooker knows you didn't want them mixed. If it's apparent that they were mixed, they were planted. As a mixture, that's a problem. There's many different shurim for this distancing. Depending on the size of the field, which is being planted, and based on also how proliferation of the leaves, and how far the branches spread. All that will depend how. I think this is the roots. Good, fine. Yeah, good. Thank you. So all of that will determine based on the perception of the onlooker how mixed it looks, right? You think a diagram for the affair. So that will determine how mixed does it look. How mixed does it look when you look from a certain distance, depending on if a mile away from the airplane, all looks together, obviously. But the Shabbat have from reasonable distance. Does it? Right, exactly. As far as I could see, right? Does it look mixed or not? Now, that depends on the field, depends on the species. Test Ketzad, what's an example of different species and different shooter? So, you have a field that was sown with one grain, let's say wheat and barley. In the same field, not a different field, the same field. Now, what defines one field versus another? There has to be some sort of demarcation, obviously. But whatever the gather is of same versus different field, you want to find in the same field. You want to plant barley. I only have one field. I'm a poor guy. It's only one piece of land I have. So you want to plant in that same field different species. How far you have to be a base reva? What is that? Because a base reva, a square of 10.2 amas by 10.2 amas. Yeah, 18 feet by 18 feet. Well,
empty space.
oh, good. So it depends on the size of the field. If your field is the size of the shul, you have a problem. It's very tight, right? But okay, good. Now, why is that a base reva? That depends how reva relates to a son. A base saw. It's not important in math right now. Good. Okay. Now, where must you leave it? In the middle, on the side. Again, my field is. I don't have to leave the entire length of the field. It's just one location in the field, wherever you want to put it, basically. If you didn't have this gap between them at that time, at that style, I'm sorry, I lost my place over here. Also, it's also, but if any like actually you grave in order to chayv magas it has to be 6 tvachim. If it's not 6 tvachim, yeah, then 10 amas, absolutely, exactly. So here's a picture of what this would look like. So you have the field over here, and the gray area is the area that's fallow, that's missing grain. So even though on top of the north or the south of it, it's touching, look at the difference. As long as I see in your field this massive void, I know you didn't intentionally mix them together. Fine, good. Halacha ches. I'm sorry, halacha. Yud, thank you. No, Yud Aleph.
So they weren't going to have sugar.
Yud, thank you. Exactly. Halacha Yud, thank you. If your field is planted with vegetables, so pekish l'zorah b'tzidas yarek acher. Previous halacha was talking about grains. Now we're talking about vegetables. You want to plant tomatoes on this side, cucumbers on that side. I feel it's last even squash. Let's say even squash. The leaves are very, very exotic. You got to leave a square somewhere along the border of 6 tvachim square, a lot smaller. Hey, minat sabin. Again, from the middle or from the side, it's irrelevant. It's less than 6 by 6 asir. It's also because of our sign. However, less is mamish within a tefach. Yeah, as long as one tefach there, it's not also minat. It's a big difference to know is the guy doing it on purpose possible edus or not. If it's more than a tefach, he's not possible edus, even though he's an oismor. If it's less than a tefach, it's just a minat. He's possible. Yeah, good. Yud base. Sorry, Yud. Now that was.
You're in a rush.
If you have on one of the fields was grain like halacha tes, Vashnia betid yarek it las. The other side was vegetables or las like halacha yud. Then use the shear as if it was 2 grains. As long as one of them is grain, it's a base reva. If both not grain, then you can do the smaller shear of 6 tvachim square. Yud base. The whole problem of the shiur that abundant of Marasayin. When is it an issue? Ben shtei sadas between 2 fields.
One young field. You wanted to plant zeraya.
Yeah, if one of the field, no, halacha test. We said it's that same field. So okay, so it's when do we see this? You should apply between 2 fields. If my field is planted with vegetables, and I want to plant a row of vegetables of the other species on the side. In other words, I don't want to plant 2 whole crops next to each other, because in halacha test you clarify it's the same sod in one field. That's what we say it's make a base reva. So when he says over here between 2 fields, he means that it's 2 crops of grain and barley in one field, because halacha test clarified that's talking about one field. The point is that you have 2 large crops next to each other. Over here in halacha yud beis, the vart is. In halacha test in the beginning, he said, so we're talking about one field. So now he said, more than shtei sadas. I don't think it's a contradiction, because I think he means like 2 whole crops, basically. Again, however.
Look at that.
Is it acheres by you or achas?
Acheres.
Besada acheres, marchik it's by you. The word is acheres?
In Pes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, but means it's achas. Okay, it's very important.
That's why
Very interesting. Okay. So maybe your gears is taka right. Yeah, I see here in the English talk, he says another field. Okay, good. So yeah, thank you. Okay, so that's very strange. Big error on their part. Okay, so when do you have to make this achaka ben shtei between 2 fields? 2 fields. If my field was with vegetables, in the same field, I want to plant a row of vegetables. So because it's clear that I'm not mixing them on purpose, because no one usually plants in one field these type of things. It's efficient to make between the vegetables and the grain 1 long row, like a groove, a trench. Yeah. 6 tvachim wide and 6 tvachim deep. But how long is it? Yeah, along the whole thing apparently.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the separation.
You want to plant 2
Right.
different things.
Yeah, because in
That's
one.
not 2 years. That's one. That's one Zorim and 1 year.
Yeah. Right. No, we said Avim Haisis there's through York. Vegetables on tomatoes here, cucumbers there. So therefore, it's sufficient to make this long row of 6 tefachim deep, 6 tefachim wide.
Why is that enough? Why is that enough for the 2 different fields?
Because a good question. So I'm not sure. The Vaya states that in one field.
It seems it's less marza for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. There's a reason I'm sorry. I don't know. I'll find what it is. But the Vaya states that you have like a one row as opposed to 2 whole fields because it's smaller. You don't need such a large gap between them. Large fields look more mixed. 2 rows, right?
A large field of something over here, and a large field of something else right next to it. It's more apparent than if you have 1 row here, 1 row here. That seems to be more supposed to be here.
I hear you. Okay. Okay. All right.
Easily, and if you have a big field or something.
No, so I okay. I mean, I think the word is that when the Rambam list over here, right? The larger something is, the more. Right, if you're looking from outer space, from like space, a large gap seems very small. In other words, the word when you have something very very big, so like if you have a row of tomatoes and a row of cucumbers and there's a foot between them, that's a gap. If there's 10 miles of grain and 10 miles of something else and 1 foot between them, it's not a very clear gap. It looks like a small little thing compared to the whole size. That's the chayr of word. Okay, yeah. Okay, Gimel. That's the chayr of word. I'm not. Again, I hear what you're saying though. My field had grain planted inside it. And in that grain field, not 2 vegetables. Next to, I want to plant 1 row of some kind of grain. Even if it's a row of squash, and squash, the leaves are very tangled and very, very elaborate. Huh? Yeah. So again, 6 tefachim is sufficient. And if the leaves become tangled with the wheat because their leaves are very, very extravagant, you have to uproot the tefua on the side next to the squash. So it shouldn't seem like it's mixed. No, good. That's the verb. But you took your sufficient sufficient space, and over here the word. But so it gets too close. Just uproot the wheat. In other words, you did what you're supposed to. You made the shear right. Well. That's obviously an option also, but the word is that the wheat is easier to uproot and it's not such a loss. 1 kernel of wheat is not worth much. It lasts more expensive, right? I mean, a few, even like a few feet, a few inches is not a big deal. It lasts. Each one is more relevant. I think more expensive. Yeah, he says over here from the Radvaz that you could also cut off the extension of the squash plants, but you'd suffer greater loss in doing that. Therefore, the Ram is basically giving good advice. It's an eitzah. Yeah, okay. The eitzah, just to say, if you plant 1 row of one species and 1 row of a second species, it's enough to have 1 trench. If they're both, even though there's grain involved, yeah.
I don't know.
1 species of what? No, because why is it? What's he adding? Yeah, what's he adding over here? No, I don't know. Okay.
Here, before we just spoke about
yeah.
and
Thank you. Sorry,
legumes.
but yeah. But also, we talked about a field, and next to the field, we want to plant a row of great vegetables.
Yeah.
Obviously, now if it's 2 rows of vegetables, again, it's again that the 2 rows of vegetables are smaller, so any gap is more blatant, and therefore, it's obvious that's sheer sufficient. You're dalit. If I do what I'm supposed to. I distanced I'm supposed to. And they came, draped one on the other. Whether it's grain on grain, a yarek, or vegetable on vegetable, a yarek, or tefua, or vegetable or grain, each one on the other. How come what's the motor? He did the proper shear he's supposed to.
Then it's not Marathon.
So
if it's Marathon, it's Marathon.
right, because the word is that the onlooker again knows that you did what you're supposed to. He doesn't because he sees how it was distanced. That's the word.
It's spread all over the place. Okay, brother.
I guess it depends how mixed it is. Yeah, I hear you. I think it depends how mixed it is. Okay. The exception to this is the Egyptian glass. Because, Greek. Because that's exceptionally, long. Therefore, matzah, if it does drape one over the other, yakum, now you have to uproot from that side, as we said, to make sure it shouldn't be mixed together. All right, Tesvav. I thought there was a picture here that'd be helpful, but there is not. Okay. There's a Mishnayos and Maseches Kilayim that'd be helpful. That picture would be helpful. Oh, you know what? The Kati has. All right, next time we'll get it. Tes Zayin. No, Tes Vav. If there was a natural barrier between the two minim, like there was some say it's a bur, some say it's a bur. Either a bur means an empty, fallow piece of land, or a bur, a deep pit in the ground. Or there's a. I'm sorry. Bor is either an empty. Let's say bor is like a deep pit in the ground with water, called a cistern in English. Or there's an empty piece of land that wasn't used. Yeah, what is plow but not plant? That's the part. So it's empty. I go for there's a stone fence. There's a path. I got a shoe or a fence 10 tefachim high. Or there's a ditch 10 tefachim deep. It's 4 tefachim wide. See, a fence 10 tefachim high is enough. A pit 10 tefachim deep, if it's 1 inch wide, it doesn't help you. It has to be 4 tefachim wide to make it relevant. You have a kind of tree that like a weeping willow, maybe the branches, spill over onto the ground. They hover over the ground in a way that's like a natural barrier, like a tent. Or a rock which is 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide, or 4 tefachim square maybe. That can be a barrier, and therefore you can have the two pieces on one side of each. And the other piece on the other side. Again, even though let's say this rock, which is 10 tefachim tall and 4 tefachim square, doesn't go along the whole way with the field, but it's not. It's the fact that it's kind of a observable barrier. You can use it as like an imaginary line that goes north to south or east to west, whichever you want to do it, and that you have on both sides this type of good. Since these are all considered separations, they all cause to be considered to be visually separate. And then I'm going to clarify now that Adkan is all talking about when the field belonged to one person. When it's applied, they have to have a space or a barrier, where it's all in your field. It's all your land, all your property. If your field is planted wheat, then the other guy comes next to plant with barley. Shenemar says, Kilayim, you cannot plant Kilayim in your field, which is very, very interesting. I mean, I don't know, but maybe can I go into a Hefker field and start planting Kilayim? It's not my field. It's Hefker. I don't know. I'm just okay. And is such uses the Kilayim, huh? So lav dafka, unless if I'm being mechavim for a kinyan. But even so, I don't know if planting fields is considered a kinyan. I'm not sure. If you're selling it to me and we
selling it. If I go into a field,
a hefker you plant,
and I plant for 3
so
years,
it has to protect. Lav dafka, you have to be doing that protects the field. I don't remember offhand what it is. I'm just, okay, akaponim, and for sure, if I'm a ferish mechav not to be koine, then for sure I'm not koine. So again, so
I'm taking whatever becomes plant. You're not planting it.
No, the plants can be mine. But I hear you. I'm not sure. Shemar, it says Sad Chol. It says Kilayim. Your field don't plant Kilayim. Ein Isser Ela Shinizah B'Sechdehu Kilayim. The issue is only if it's planting in the person himself. Shemar does not say Ha'aretz. This is Kilayim. Do not plant Kilayim in the earth. Even and additionally, Ela Filu. Not only that, Ela Filu Zar B'Sechdehu Kisayim Samachal Chitim. If I plant in my field barley next to wheat, so I have a lot of wheat, 20 amos of wheat. Then I plant 2 amos of barley. Or vice versa. Your field is barley. I plant wheat in my field. But the last 10 amas, I plant barley. So it looks like to the eye, it's an extension of your field. Although it's mine. Because it looks like this, the barley is an extension of your property. So therefore, it's clear to the observer. Again, you made the proper distance in Manatera, obviously. To the observable eye, it looks like it's an extension of your field. The Pasha's people know that this is your property. This is my property. They see that your barley is sticking to my field. It still gives the impression of 2 separated fields, therefore, because of the ownership issue. And therefore, that's considered not a sign. Yud Zayin. If his field was planted with wheat, and your field is planted with wheat. Also, I can plant 1 row of flax on the border of our fields. And the reason is, normally it's not the way to plant flax for 1 row. You plant huge fields of flax. So 1 row is not going to do anything. But The guy did it to test the field. Does this soil produce good flax? It's like you're destroying it. You're planting it just to be destructive, not to benefit from the mixture. The fichah, therefore, also is exactly.
For example,
So it doesn't look like it was done again. You do need some kind of hachakim out there, obviously, tefach or whatever it is, but it doesn't look like it was done for the purpose of being mixed. Again, the whole problem is that if it looks like you wanted them mixed. The fichah, therefore, a different type of species between the two wheat fields is not allowed to be planted. They're both one species. Unless you do a proper distancing, like we described before. So it's only if it's two different owners. If it's one owner. I'm sorry, it's only if it's flax. If it's not, because a flax, no one thinks you plant one row. Anything else, you could tackle plant one row. It'd be a problem. If it's tomatoes, it'd be a problem. You have to have the proper distancing. We described it in the previous parts of the halacha of the parak. Yud ches. If my field and your field were planted with two different types of tvua, so I had barley, you had wheat. Let's say you should not plant even one row of mustard seeds or safflower seed, even one row. Because that you do sometimes plant even one row, unlike flax.
It's fair enough if you don't have a separation. You have one kind of store and I have a different kind of store.
So that's not a problem because we have a space between pastures. Oh no, sorry, two people's fields. My field and your field, two different owners. So it's not a problem to plant barley and wheat next to each other. We said that was the previous. That was halacha. Right,
because people know when the end of my field is.
People know it's your field versus my field, right? Exactly. It's not a problem. It's not halacha necessary. That was what we said. There's no distancing required, and that was halacha Yud Zayin. Test Zayin. Yeah. Right. So now you have barley in your field. I have wheat in my field. So we can plant mamash up to the border, right? So you should, but between them, if you have any space you left for whatever reason, you shouldn't plant different kind of safflower or mustard because people will plant one row, and it looks like you did it for the benefit of mixing it, whatever benefit you get from mustard, make it with wheat, it makes it taste better. However, if the field was two different kinds of vegetables, not grain, you could plant between them the safflower or mustard seed. You're allowed to plant mustard seed or safflowers next to any kind of thing. The exception is grain. When it comes to grain, it doesn't damage it. When it comes to the others, it does ruin it. Therefore, it doesn't look like you wanted it to happen. Because why would you do that? So therefore, by grain, where it doesn't ruin it, it's not a problem. It looks like you wanted it, and you were happy. Like mustard, by tfu, it's usher because it does not damage it. It may even help it. So therefore, I think you did it on purpose. By tomatoes, you wouldn't do it on purpose. You're going to ruin your tomatoes and your mustard seeds. Huh? I don't know. You couldn't afford the land. Maybe it helps it grow. Maybe it helps. I don't know. If you have a portion of your field that's touching the edge of the other portion of someone else's field, in other words, let's say you have like a diamond. Let's say look at the picture over here. Yeah, you have a square and a diamond touching each other. So you have it like the corners are touching, and like in a formation where it's not side to side. Yeah. Do you see this picture? So this is the formation. Let's say you have like tiles on like a shul floor where it's black and white checkered, like a checkerboard. That's how it is. So it's like checkerboard style. So each one is touching only in the corners, right? So then, that's mutter. That looks like a separate. That's considered an observable separation. Needs to say if the corners were touching, like a checkerboard. It looks like two fields at the end touching. Which that does not require distinction, separation, because like we said before, when you have it in a way that it's clear that it's separated to the eye, there's like a way where there's it looks like a barrier basically. So if it's checkerboard style, there's no hachaka required. Okay. No, and I have to confess, I actually never learned Mishnayos Maseches Kilayim, so I'm not